Senators, I see that we have quorum. I call to order this meeting of the Standing Senate Committee on Social Affairs, Science and Technology. Yamapal Ratna Umitwa.
My name is Ratna Omidvar. I am a senator from Ontario.
Of the Standing Senate Committee on Social Affairs, Science and Technology. Today, colleagues, we are beginning our study of Bill C-232, an act respecting Arab Heritage Month. Before we begin, I would like to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves to our witnesses and the public, starting with the Vice Chair of Committee on my left.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Jane Cordy, and I'm a senator from Nova Scotia.
Rosemary Moody, Ontario.
Fleur-de-Lys Gigi Osler, Manitoba.
Jean-Guy Dagenet du Québec.
René Cormier du Nouveau-Brunswick.
Wanda Thomas Bernard from Nova Scotia, which is Mi'kmaq territory.
Sénatrice Chantal Petitclerc du Québec.
Bonjour, Éric Forêt, sénateur de la division du Golfe au Québec.
Bonjour, Judith Sidman Moret, Québec. Bonjour.
Marie-Françoise Mégy du Québec.
Bonjour. Donna Dasco, senator from Ontario. Hi.
Thank you, colleagues. Joining us for our first panel, we welcome the following witness in person, the Honourable David McGuinty, sponsor of the bill. Thank you for joining us today. We will begin with opening remarks from Mr. McGuinty. Mr. McGuinty, you will have 5 minutes for your opening statement, followed by questions from my colleagues. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. It's a privilege and it's an honour to be with you here this afternoon to speak to my private member's bill C-232, the Arab Heritage Month Act, which passed the House of Commons with unanimous support. The bill would establish the month of April in Canada as Arab Heritage Month. It would recognise and celebrate the historic mark Arab Canadians have made and continue to make in building Canadian society. This would align with the Arab American Heritage Month celebrated in April in the United States of America. In Canada, diversity has always been one of our greatest single strengths, and celebrating our diversity is key to building a strong and more inclusive country for all. Arab Heritage Month in Canada will be an important opportunity for Arab Canadians to be recognized for their contributions to this beautiful country. The first persons of Arab origin arrived in Canada in 1882, in the early years after Confederation, some 142 years ago. Since then, the population of Arab Canadians has grown to well over 1 million, and it continues to flourish. Arab Heritage Month in Canada will provide us an opportunity to show our appreciation for their invaluable contributions to build a stronger and more inclusive Canada. The population of Arab Canadians has now grown to well over 1 million, with dynamic Arab Canadian communities thriving from coast to coast to coast. In my own riding of Ottawa South, which I've been serving now for over 20 years, we have the second largest Arabic-speaking population of all the electoral districts in Canada. I have many friends in the National Capital Region Arab community, and well beyond, I'm extremely proud of their outstanding achievements, and it's a privilege to be their representative. Les Canadiens d'origine arabe de
Canadians of Arab origin from all walks of life have made important contributions to Canada's social, economic and political life, as well as to the country's cultural fabric, notably through literature, music, food and fashion. These are just some of the many ways in which Arab Canadians share their culture with the wider Canadian community, and we thank them for it. Although Arab Canadians come from different countries of origin and different religious backgrounds, they have more in common, namely leadership, entrepreneurship, and a strong work ethic. We can recognise and pay tribute to the countless Arab Canadian entrepreneurs and small business owners across Canada who do so much to support their communities.
Personal note. In my own family, my Syrian-Canadian godfather was a man of great intelligence, kindness, and integrity. His origins were humble. In fact, they were steeped in poverty. And his values instilled in me a deep appreciation for hard work, giving back, particularly through public service. More recently, many of my nieces and nephews have married Lebanese spouses. We have welcomed them with open arms into our large family, and they have welcomed us into theirs. The enactment of Arab Heritage Month in Canada would ensure that the contributions of Arab Canadians are recognized, shared, and finally celebrated across this great country, not just every April, but every day. I hope, through my remarks, to have made support of this bill a self-evident truth. We are always stronger when we stick together. And to illustrate, I'll close with the words of my incredibly wise mother, who used to say to her 10 children at the dinner table, "Understand, kids, you have a choice to make. If you pull apart, you will feel like 5, but if you pull together, you will feel like 20. I believe that this Arab Heritage Month proposal is about pulling together and recognizing and reflecting the unbelievable contributions that our Arab Canadian neighbours and citizens continue to make. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. McGuinty. We will now go to questions from my colleagues. Colleagues, I suggest 4 minutes for a question and an answer. If I may, let me ask you my first question, or the first question. I know you mentioned alignment with the U.S. Arab Heritage Month, and that kind of makes sense that the continent or the North American people celebrate it together. But is there a significance to April?
It was the most beautiful month in Canada.
It is?
A month of renewal.
Okay. All right. On that note, Senator Cordy.
Thank you. Always a politician. Thank you for that. Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing forward this bill. And I did read from a previous speech that you made in the House that Ottawa South has the second largest Arabic-speaking population. I'm curious to know, I'll ask you one question and then carry on, what area has the largest? What is number one? And number two, and then secondly, you also spoke, not today, but about the population, that 42% are under the age of 24. So I thought that was interesting, and maybe you could comment on that. Were they born here? Did they immigrate as young children, or what was that? And I thought I was really struck by another comment that you made, and I think sometimes people will say, well, why do we have, this is Canada, why do we have an Arab Heritage Month or a Lebanese Heritage Month, which I sponsored about a year ago or 2 years ago? So I thought your comment was, in your previous speech, was that celebrate Canadian and Arabic identities. They are not mutually exclusive. So I wonder if you could just talk about that. I think that was a very important comment that you made in the House of Commons. I thought that was very relevant and very important. And then maybe you could talk about the young population and the second largest. What is the largest population in Canada?
I think the largest population is somewhere in Edmonton, if I recall, but I can fact check that for you and get back to you. The question, too, of a young and dynamic youthful population in Canada is what it is. And it's phenomenally ambitious, hardworking, entrepreneurial, risk-taking. When we began looking at the Arab Canadian population as a whole, it's just remarkable the number of individuals, from Leon's Furniture to elite athletes to heart surgeons to very senior public servants and academics and writers and thinkers and HVAC entrepreneurs, folks from every walk of life, highly accomplished, very self-reliant. And it really struck me when I began looking at the overall age and what we're looking at, just a dynamic population that Canada will benefit from as time goes on. The question of celebrating our diversity it's interesting. I've just come from Geneva, where I led a delegation for Canada to the Interparliamentary Union's Global Assembly. There were 1,550 parliamentarians there from 140 countries. And the world is struggling. It is struggling. In that microcosmic assembly hall, I could tell that the world continues to struggle with celebrating each other. And I think this is one way where Canada can shine. I've always believed, in my 20 years in elected public service and my 10 years as a deputy minister at the Privy Council office previously, that Canada has a special responsibility to showcase our ability to come together and celebrate each other. And I think this is very much about celebrating our Arab Canadian neighbors. It fits well with the Tamil, the Black, the Irish, the Sikh, the Asian, the Canadian Jewish, the Polish, the National Indigenous, the Italian, the Filipino, the Portuguese, the German, the Canadian Islamic, the Latin American, the Women's, the Hindu, and the Lebanese Heritage Months. And I think this is very, frankly, smart of Canadians to be able to to indicate to the world that we are open to the world. We're not asking people to leave themselves behind when they join us, when they bring their families here. We're hoping very much that they can continue to reflect all those wonderful qualities that different cultures bring to our mosaic.
Thank you very much for that. But you forgot Scottish.
Sorry?
You forgot Scottish.
The cottage?
I'm from Cape Breton. You forgot the
I-
Scottish.
Okay. We'll add the
We
Scots in
we
there.
forgive the Scottish. We forgive
Thank
the
you,
Scottish.
Senator Cordy. Senator Seidman, followed by Senator Osler.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for being here. I was going to ask you the question, why April? But, you know, it's already been asked, so, and you gave such a warm response. So I guess we've talked about how you celebrate diversity with these types of heritage months. And so I guess my question for you would be, do you envisage certain ways of raising visibility and educating the population, including Arab Canadians, I suppose, but also all Canadians? What would you envisage?
I think events that are reminiscent of what other heritage months are already reflecting and celebrating, cultural events, dinners, picnics, community events, dance and music events and evenings and coming together. I think this is what a lot of the Arab Canadian population that I've worked with, and many of the groups, in fact, almost all the groups that represent Arab groups in Canada have lined up behind this. They're very supportive. I think it also allows them to put themselves in position to be able to seek some support from different orders of government to do just this, whilst contributing themselves as well. But I think there's many opportunities for us to, I can tell you that the Arab Canadian community is waiting for this to come through so that they can really celebrate it by this April, we hope. We were hoping for last April, but events have overtaken us a bit. So many different factors, many different kinds of opportunities that will, give a shape. And of course, the Arab world is not simply one country. It's not simply one religion. It's not simply one dance or music or food or dress type or language. It's a combination of those. But again, having just come from a fairly divisive meeting where people were agonizing over what's happening in the Arabian Peninsula, and lots of divisions between Arab countries, much less between other actors. I just kept reflecting on the need for Canada to do this. Again, to act as a bit of a demonstration project's the wrong word, maybe an example for folks to look to worldwide to say that country's got it, not perfect, but better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Seidman. We'll go to Senator Osler, followed by Senator Meiji.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for being here. I have a bit of a two-parter question. So for those of us who are not from the Arab Canadian community, how could we use this bill to heal divisions and reduce bigotry, hatred, divisiveness? And second part would be, could there be any potential unintended effects of designating April as Arab Heritage Month, and how can those of us not from the community use Bill C-232, again, to heal divisions, build bridges, reduce hate?
Those are two really good and difficult questions. I think all of us who are parliamentarians to begin with, but way beyond parliamentarians, can maybe, I'm not going to use the word resurrect, but I'll use the word enhance our efforts to remind each other of the unbelievable wealth that we possess in this country. I go into a grade 5 classroom, maybe 2 grade 5 classrooms. There might be 80 kids there. There are probably 40 to 50 countries of origin in today's world. I tell the children all the time that they're wealthy beyond belief, and they start fumbling through their pockets looking for money. And I tell them it's not about money. It's about the wealth that they each and every one of them represent. We're going to have to reclaim that. More than just narrative, we're going to have to reclaim that value as a country. I'm a person who has spent decades working abroad. Decades. And I still do a lot of work abroad. And I see that Canada has a very, very special responsibility to help show the rest of the world that there is another way. And so by surfacing the celebration of each other, I think that that can help undermine bigotry and divisiveness and hate rhetoric, which can rear its head, especially at these times where we seem to have moved from anger to hate. Maybe it's post-COVID. I've talked about post-COVID stress disorder in the past. I don't know whether that's what's at play here, but there seems to be a harder edge. And for all of us here who are parliamentarians, we're on the receiving end of a lot of that. In terms of unintended consequences, I hope there are none. There might be, but if we want to make this place work, this country work, we got to work at it. We've got to speak openly. We've got to defend each other. We have to call out bigotry and divisive rhetoric. It's a problem. It's a big problem, particularly as the guy who oversees the National Security and Intelligence Committee. I can tell you that foreign interference is not something that is going away, and it's certainly I expect to see it in our next elections, just like I know it's in play right now in the United States. So we're going to have to work very hard to, I think, surface all the goodness that Canadians reflect, that we can muster, to remind each other that we're hurtling through space on a very finite planet. There ain't no alternative. There's just the one of them, and we're going to have to make it work. Thank you.
Senator Meji, followed by Senator Cormier.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had a question about why April, but never mind. I can comment on this and say that the existence of Heritage Month X is very important. I have experienced this with the Black History Month and also the South American Heritage Month. So this is a moment when people from this community take time to reflect on their origins and so on, and then they can train up younger people who may be invaded by American culture. But if you've based yourself around the month of April that comes from the US, in the Arab community, is there a difference? Because in the US, the culture is very different from here. And here I see it reflected in other communities, but in the Arab communities, is there this big difference that exists as well? Which means that if you have the same dates, is it going to bring them closer on the two sides of the border? That's an excellent question. Yes, we hope that it will bring together the Canadian and the U.S. Arab community. Now, I was at a meeting in Kentucky where there were 2,500 legislators from the U.S. states, not from the federal state level, but from all of the states, and I had a discussion with a group of Arab American legislators, and I mentioned that I was the sponsor of this bill, and they were really blown away by that. They learned that it was not the U.S. Congress that legislated the equivalent. It was President Biden himself, by presidential decree, who set up this month. He tabled it, and it was adopted by him. no doubt he thought it would have been divisive if it had to go through the U.S. Congress. And the U.S. legislators were really impressed, blown away, because for them it was more a question of having to leave their culture at the door when they came into the U.S. That's how they felt. But in Canada, I said it's more a question of celebrating one's culture and bringing it with us for each individual here in Canada. Now, I don't think it would be damaging to have these both at the same month. Perhaps the Canadian month could help, where we've got this situation in the US where increasingly the two sides or the two groups of electors and the two parties really don't seem to be able to speak to each other at all. And at that meeting in Kentucky, it was interesting to see that there were several sessions. Imagine they had to have organized sessions just to teach the legislators from the two parties how to actually hold a discussion together. So if what we're doing here in Canada could help with the situation in April in the US, all the better, fine. We wanted to align it with April in US because it's the Canadian groups themselves who said it would be very useful to be able to have things happening on both sides of the border. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. And now, Senator Cormier. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming for us, and thank you for this bill. It gave me food for thought about cultural diversity in Canada. And the Arab community shares this identity as a whole, but of course there's lots of cultural diversity within that group. It's very strong. And then I thought about the artistic sector from which I come. They have Arab origin. Mawida Wad, an extraordinary man of theatre, for example. It comes from Lebanon. And there's René Angelil and Basha Shbib, who's very important in the cinema world. We forget, in fact, about Canadians and their origins and where our compatriots come from. So I've got a question for you. Do you think that this day is going to allow the different Arab cultural communities that are very diverse to come together more and to coexist? Because I'm not very familiar with this. Are there any challenges in terms of bringing together the different Arab communities within Canada? So is this a day that will allow these communities to come closer together? That's an excellent question. We do hope that that's the case. And that is why all of the groups of Arab origin in Canada are behind this bill. They support it because it's an instrument for having rapprochement between the communities, bringing them closer together. There's so much pressure, divisive pressure and powers trying to divide us. So this type of celebration, I believe, can bring people together instead of dividing them. For example, it could be organized in the municipalities and the provinces. Of course, there would be federal funding to help with the celebrations. That was my second question, in fact, for you, because I know that time is ticking. I know my chair well. She's very efficient. So there is no funding that's attached to this bill, and often that's a challenge. So how do you imagine that governments will be able to actually support this bill? So once this bill becomes part of Canadian legislation and this month is actually set up, then that would give the permission to the Arab communities to send in funding applications to the federal level, because at the federal level there's always money that's allocated for all these different celebratory months that take place across Canada. So I think that would help on the funding side of things. We've had so much support from the outset. The Arab community is eagerly awaiting this, and I don't think there'll be a question of funding because they really, really want to celebrate. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah, we're not going to be that strict today, so. Senator Al-Zaibak.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. McGuinty, for being here.
Senator.
As an Arab, as a Syrian-born Arab Canadian, I want to express my gratitude to you and to your colleagues in the House of Commons for bringing forward this bill, and to thank Senator Cordy for sponsoring it at the Senate. Your hard work and friendship have been recognized by members of the Arab Canadian community throughout the country and beyond. And I don't have a question to ask beyond asking, more than asking you what else you think that Canada can do to strengthen relationship between Canada and the Arab world in general. And thank you once again for your friendship, to you and your family, as a matter of fact, for your friendship and hard work and for your public service. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's very lovely. And I also want to thank Senator Cordy for her stick handling of this through the Senate at a busy time. I've been asked many times, why would an Irish, French, Catholic Canadian be bringing an Arab Heritage Month proposal to the Canadian Parliament? And my answer is my mothers were always stronger together. And this is an opportunity for me to showcase what I've witnessed for many decades in Canada, emanating from our Arab Canadian population. Quiet, disciplined, heavy lifting, entrepreneurship, professionals, academics, artists, musicians, you name it. And I found that most of my Arab Canadian friends and colleagues are not boastful, very quiet. They just sort of do the work, whether they're driving cabs or whether they're operating on brains. So I think that for me, this is also important for Canada in the world. The Arab world is growing quickly, not just in the West, but also Arab countries are growing quickly. This gives Canada, I think, a leg up in relationship, in trading, in exchanges, in capacity, in bringing in expertise. I don't know how many Arab medical professionals I've helped bring into the country to work at the Children's Hospital or the Ottawa Hospital in my riding, which is, the Ottawa Hospital is the largest hospital by patient care in Canada. And many, many, many Arab professionals have come in and are helping us with all kinds of different disciplines, including a lot of research. So for me, this is just good hockey. It's just Canada in the world. And again, showcasing that we can come together from every walk of life. I've got, I think 85 languages in my district now, some 116 countries of origin. These are the United Nations of Ottawa South. And I happen to have a very large contingent of Arab Canadians who are outstanding neighbors. So for me, this has been a great honor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Faure.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, de me permettre.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to put a question. If this bill is adopted, and I very much hope that it will be adopted in the current context, and this will be an opportunity that we should seize for the Arab Canadian community to actually shed light and bring further value to their culture. But for the Canadian community, it's also an opportunity to develop inclusive and respect-based values, especially in the current context. And over and above adopting the bill, I think we should be sending out a message to the Arab Canadian community, and I think that will be easier than getting the message across to the Canadian community in general. So I think there's a responsibility beyond adopting this bill. We have to ensure that we get the right message across to the Canadian community to develop these values of respect and inclusion. And have you thought tangibly about how we can actually take on that big challenge? I'll answer in English with an expression I use very often.
Me that, it's important to tolerate each other. And I say to them, I don't like the word tolerate at all. I'm not interested in tolerating anybody. I'm interested in celebrating everyone. And I think that that is the hallmark of an advanced 21st century society today, because as I mentioned earlier, the planet is hurtling at breakneck speed through space, and we're facing a lot of problems. And as an environmental lawyer who's just come back from working on the Sustainable Development Goals for the Secretary General of the UN, I keep doing this. I keep trying to implement them in 180 plus parliaments. I am absolutely convinced that we're going to be compelled very soon as a planet to decide whether we're going to cooperate or not. And it will not be predicated on just humanity. It will be predicated almost entirely on carrying capacity and whether or not the planet is going to be able to carry the population it's got with what we're seeing: scarcity, loss of DNA, energy problems, water, freshwater problems. We've made a lot of progress. We've eliminated half the world's global poverty in the last 50 years. Huge progress. But I think with some of the things we're going to be seeing under the rubric of climate change, this kind of Canadian approach of coming together is going to be absolutely essential. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of stressors now. I've been called in to help resolve the dispute between Ethiopia and neighboring countries in terms of abstraction of water. I used to do this for a living in another world, in another time, but that's just a flare-up of so many more to come. And so if Canada's in a position to show that we live together and we celebrate each other and we realize we are all in this together and we all share our common humanity, that's just full stop. That places us in a very credible position around the world. A lot of people are very entrenched, very fearful, very mistrustful, very insular, and that's okay. That's okay. That's where the planet is, in my view. But I think this kind of measure, along with the other Heritage Months, puts us in a unique position. I hope that answers your question. Just back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cormier, you wanted a second round.
Oui. Oui.
Yes. I wonder about the question of language. Of course, Arabic, unfortunately, is not a language that I master. It's also very diverse. So how are we going to tackle this bill this month? How will it allow us to have celebrations? And I'm going to make a comment, perhaps it's a little bit offside, but often we identify the Arabic language with a certain form of violence in our world, and I'm couching this in specific nuanced terms here. And I'm aware of the fact that sometimes when people hear Arabic, they feel fearful for lots of different reasons that may be well-founded or completely fictitious. Now, it's an extraordinary language, Arabic, so how can we use this month to actually celebrate this language and ensure that we enjoy the musicality of this language so that we can buy into this, appropriate this for ourselves, even if we don't actually speak Arabic? That's basically what I'm driving at with my question. Canada in the world. I remember the first time I was introduced, there was a debate for candidates in my local riding, and people asked me, what's your position about official bilingualism in Canada? And my answer remains the same, namely, that's a good start. So that young people leaving high school, well, in the Netherlands, they have to have a minimum of 4 minimum languages. In Germany, it's a minimum of 3 when they leave high school. So the idea that we don't promote as many languages as possible in our world, which is becoming smaller and smaller, is something that really is a missed opportunity for me. So if this bill can help with the people learning Arabic, that's excellent. The Arab world is continuing to increase in terms of its population size, and we do business throughout the world. So why should we not have Canadians actually being able to express themselves in the language of Saudi Arabians, for example? So I hope that this will help, just as I hope that the Portuguese Heritage Month will help to stimulate interest in Portuguese, or the same thing for the Italian month. Of course, there is work to be done. Well, now I can't quite recall the word.
But we have to overcome those perceptions because they're just that, they're perceptions. The Arab-speaking people all over the world are beautiful, warm, loving, caring, hardworking, accomplished people.
I agree.
And we're lucky to have so many Arab Canadians helping us build this country and going forward. And I see it again as an opportunity for this country to reach out in the world and engage. And if you can engage in someone's first language, puts you in a good competitive position.
I have a technical question. Maybe it's...
A technical question?
Well,
You want to ask me in Arab?
No,
In
no.
Arabic?
Vous avez proposé un projet de loi.
So you're putting forward a bill. Why did you not just come out with a motion? Why did you decide to use the instrument of a bill? Well, it's because a motion wouldn't lead to exactly the same outcome. I really wanted to have a dedicated month for the Arab community, and I have put forward several motions in the House in the last 20 years. But I wanted it to start as quickly as possible so that people can get festivities, festivals organised, as well as picnics, get-togethers, everywhere. And I saw that we already had so many other months. And I think of these heritage months were put forward by bills rather than through motions. Thank you.
Mr. McGuinty, celebration is one thing, addressing deeply rooted systemic institutional racism is another. The Senate Human Rights Committee put out a report on Islamophobia where we noted the presence of racism in institutions here in Ottawa, the CRA, the CBSA, IRCC. So how do you think this will build a bridge, or will it?
Well, I hope it might help. In my other day job, 30 hours a week, heading up the National Security and Intelligence Committee, we performed Canada's first ever diversity and inclusion analysis of all the security and intelligence organizations. And we did so because we knew that we needed a baseline. We can talk till the cows come home, but we need baselines. We need measurable, we need metrics, we need baselines. You can't manage what you don't measure. And so we set out and we tracked, and now we're following up with the work that we did that shows. The first thing we did was we actually validated the notion that the best security and intelligence organizations worldwide are the most diverse. We don't say that. The FBI does. And they looked at it worldwide. So if you want good security and intelligence, you need good people. If you want good people, you need good diversity. You need serious inclusion. And so that's why we set a baseline analysis in place so we can measure every 3 to 5 years to say, are we making progress? So I don't know whether this speaks directly to the important findings of that particular report. But let's start by starting. And if we can start by celebrating the best in our Arab Canadian neighbors and citizens and the folks who have joined us most recently, that's probably a good way to begin.
Thank you, Mr. McGuinty. This is likely the friendliest committee you have come across. Come again. Colleagues, we are
Can
going...
I come back?
Yep.
Can I come back?
Yes. We will now proceed to clause by clause. Mr. McGuinty, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave. Be our guest.
Thank
if
you
choose.
so much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it agreed that the committee proceed to clause by clause consideration of Bill C-232, an act respecting Arab Heritage Month? Agreed. Shall the title stand postponed? Agreed. Shall the preamble stand postponed? Agreed. Shall clause 1, which contains the short title, stand postponed? Agreed. Shall clause 2 carry? Agreed. Shall clause 1 carry? Agreed. Shall the preamble carry? Agreed. Shall the title carry? Agreed. Shall the bill carry? Agreed. Congratulations, Mr. McGuinty. We will report it out to the Senate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Well
it. Merci beaucoup.
Is it agreed that I report this bill to the Senate in both official languages? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. We will now suspend until our next panel, which starts at 5:15, colleagues. The gift of time.